All right, everybody, welcome to another edition of What's What BR. Today we have two special guests with us today. We have Adam Knapp and Liz Smith from the Baton
Oh,
Rouge Area Chamber. How are you guys doing?
We're great.
doing great, Brandon. How are you?
I'm getting through. I start every show with I couldn't ask for better weather. I would write checks for weather like this if I could. So
They say it's Chamber of Commerce weather. I want to take credit.
it's provided by, the
Is
Chamber
there
of
a
Commerce.
logo in the
Yeah.
sky?
We're going to get a Skyrider every day in an airplane. To just put that
Yep.
logo there, courtesy of, brought to you by,
There you
and
go.
so,
Exactly right.
and then when it gets horrible, we'll say it's like brought to you by the Dallas Chamber or something.
That's right.
So tell me, you guys have a million things going over there. You've got, obviously you and you've got your staff, and the board and everybody there to take care of, and then everybody in their families to take care of, but also a city of business owners, to take care of as well. What is kind of happening over there?
Well, the beginning of this was crazy. We spent the first week or so trying to digest what's the best way to restructure our mission and strategy. And in mid to late March, released a game plan of what we were going to do for ourselves to try to help businesses in as urgent a fashion as possible. I think in the crisis moment, what we saw was information was tough to come by. Folks were completely uncertain about the kinds of things that were going to be out there as resources. And at the same time, we looked at our organization and said, we have all these things that we said we were going to do this year that our staff are deployed to do that stands in the way of being able to address many of the challenges that are totally different. So we froze, as everybody, right? We stopped doing everything we thought we were going to be doing for the year, wrote up a 5-point strategy of what we need to be doing for the next few weeks, and said to our board of directors, this is what we think right now. It could change tomorrow, but right now, these are the things we're going to do. So what has been probably most important for us is to be visible to businesses about the things that we can do to help them. We've called now close to 2,000 businesses where we deployed a big chunk of our team just to be on the phone calling people. And that has been an enormous resource for us, both to get businesses information, but also to hear the things that they're scared of, that they're concerned about. That's been able to drive us to create initiatives and programs and ways to respond to those concerns. And we've been iterating that almost every day, especially, but also even weekly, to change programs, introduce new programs. And that's really evolved over this period of time quite a lot. The other thing we've done incredibly aggressively is things like this. What we realize is we have to, in a disaster, be trained to over-communicate because we are in such a saturated environment, it's tough to get through. And so if you're trying to help as many as possible, you have to find every channel possible to get news and information and valid and trustworthy information to the business community. And so we've basically done everything that we can to get that out. Nothing we've done has been for a fee, right? So you don't have to be an investor in BRAC at all to benefit from the information we've been getting out there. We've done close to 25 webinars where we've had well over 2,000 folks who've attended those to get great information from us and from thought leaders we pulled in locally and nationally to give information. We've been able to make sure that we are putting out daily a really short brief we call our COVID brief that's just one snippet that you should know today. Your time is short. Take this one piece away today. And then we've done, Liz's team, we'll hear about this more, but Liz's team has done some amazing work to research. What we would normally do is be researching for the purposes of changing the world for the betterment of Baton Rouge. This has been trying to make sure we understand all the crazy things that are coming out of Congress and out of the state of Louisiana that can help businesses, digesting it, putting it out in those COVID briefs or putting it out on our primary central resource, our webpage for the recovery, which is brac.org/recovery. And it is chock full of great local, state, and federal information that businesses can take advantage of. And I can't tell you the outpouring of sentiment that we've received from businesses has been just overwhelming for our staff who are spending long hours, in remote work, with their kids crawling on their backs, trying to make sure that they're responding to these things. And they have been awesome to make sure they're getting this information out. And the response from businesses has been overwhelmingly appreciative. And so it's been both challenging but rewarding, I think, to be in the work that we've been in the last few weeks.
It is amazing. One of the common threads, and I've talked to a lot of people, and I've yet to, maybe you guys are different, I've talked to so many different, businesses and organizations, and, everybody, in the world of, IT, it's, we have a disaster recovery plan, and we have a building, we have a hurricane plan, and we have a fire plan, and we have, this plan. I've yet to meet anybody who's had pandemic plan, and I bring that up because it's amazing. Like you had mentioned, and you kind of graze over it. I try to give everybody a little bit of credit that's deserved. It's pivoting, it's schools, businesses. We got, an order on a Friday, for instance, that schools were going to shut down. They had 36 hours, and businesses, literally had 36, 48 hours to figure out, how do we do this? Yeah. And I've been in a lot of organizations all over the map. And if you went into a team 6 months ago and said, hey, we need to work a plan where everybody's gonna have to go remotely and everybody's gonna have to stay home, and we're gonna have to still have continuity of business, and we're gonna have to be able to communicate a message, they'd be like, all right, we'll work on it. When do you need it? Next quarter? At the end of the year, we'll put these together. But people literally in companies like you guys have pulled it together, right, and said, this is how we're going to do it. We're going to jump on Zoom. We're going to stand up web pages. We're going to communicate. And that's the number one thing I think that is important, is communicate and get the message out, even if it's not perfect.
We gave our team, I believe it was, and I'm going to bungle it, but an 11-word remote work policy. And if I had to come up with a quick, what's your remote work policy? He was like, keep it as simple as possible. One of the most important words in it was just over communicate. And that one, I think, has pervaded our strategy. It's interesting that you make the point about pivot, Brandon, because our first webinar was itself a pivot for us to get into that business, figure that out, deploy the person who would normally be doing our physical events to doing our webinar events. She figured these out rapidly. And then the topic was how restaurants pivot. So it was this great kind of metaphorical and literal pivot, both for us and for the topic that we were trying to most urgently respond to. So just an interesting point that you make.
It is. It's amazing what, happened in the community. Liz, you've been at the forefront of this as well. You and I talked, we've actually done a webinar together, before. It's becoming kind of the new thing. And I think this is going to be, go ahead.
It's one of the strengths of the Baton Rouge community. I mean, with everything that we've seen for natural disasters that we've gotten through and then come back stronger from, our resiliency and our ability to pivot and to come together as a community and solve problems, it's one of the things that we're best at. So it's been tremendous to watch, but really it's not surprising that we've been able to do it as a community to solve all of these issues. I've
talked with a number of people from other communities, and yes, we did swing full to, people going home, but it wasn't the first time. We've had to do this before when there's hurricanes, and it's like, okay, well, everybody's out, for a week or two, or they're sporadic. And then we had obviously the flood. And so I think a lot of that prepared us, for, not all of us were, we weren't prepared perfectly for it, but the fact that it's like, there's some leniency there, that it's okay, that they're not here, we'll call them. And I think other communities that haven't been through these types of things or haven't ever had a situation where they've had major disasters, they're still struggling, kind of trying to figure out, how do we do this? So,
we have been in the place before where we have to do really high quality work with less than ideal circumstances. We do it.
I like the way that
sounds good.
I will say, the more we've done this show now, it's, I talked with Shelley Ripple Rogers, and she said, I thought it was amazing. She said, we've been given the gift of time, to do a lot of the things that are on that someday maybe list. And so, and that works for some, but then there's also some of us that the someday maybe list is like, I don't have time for that right now. We'll do some of it, but we're going to push this because the need is here right now, which, you guys are stepping up on need, which is kind of in line, for that a lot of businesses probably wouldn't have thought about. And I'm drawing the line and trying to somewhat unprofessionally segue us into, what you're kind of doing with some camps, is summer camp and business and economic development. Yes, camps have, an impact in the economy, in summer, but typically people aren't connecting all those lines as closely. But you guys have spotted, that there is a real need for this, right?
Yeah, we've been talking about for years how important childcare is to the economy and the economic impact that having reliable and high quality childcare creates and allows, because it lets people go to work, right? You have to have your kids being able to be cared for so you can go to work. And so we're seeing that now in very, very stark focus. As we go into phase one of reopening the economy, parents are looking around and saying, well, I'd like to go back to work, but where is my child going to go? And so we know, the schools are closed officially. They would have been closed at this point anyway. It is the first week of summer vacation, right? But I know for my own kid. And so we all would have been transitioning to some kind of summer care, whether that's a camp or at a church or whatever it happens to be. And so now we're trying to figure out, how do we get those summer camps started back up as soon as possible, so that the minute our economy is really, truly ready to reopen, we can get adults back to the workplace as soon as possible. It's something that's very much weighing on our mind. And so right now, with your help, thank you so much. We have a survey in the field of summer care providers trying to assess, are they going to be open? If they are, will they be virtual or will they be in person? What are the barriers to reopening that they have? And how can we maybe fill some of those gaps as a community?
It's amazing to step in there and kind of how, to connect all those dots, and helpful and what it's going to do. What do you see, as the big need, in the community right now? Where do you, feel that, do you have a pulse? Do you see what people, what are people thinking? What are you guys hearing?
So the big thing that we're hearing is it's about space, right? Particularly, I think right now in phase one, summer camps are allowed to be open. The Department of Education has issued guidance to summer camps and to childcare providers about how to do sanitation, things like that. So there's information that's out there, but I think there's a space issue that's gigantic, because a lot of summer care providers are little small nonprofits, or they're churches. There are other small facilities. And in order to make summer care work revenue-wise, you have to have some economy of scale. But you can't do that if you're only at 25% occupancy. You can't do that necessarily with children and social distancing and having to keep kids 6 feet apart. So people are having to be innovative, and they're trying to figure out, how can I capture more physical space to be able to have as many kids as possible. The other thing is, of course, and we see that with all businesses, not just with childcare providers, but the smaller providers have less access to information. And so that's one of the things that we're really trying to be involved with, and we know you are as well, is getting out all of that guidance, not only on sanitation and innovative ways to keep kids apart and all of that, but also on just general business recovery stuff. Everything that we've been doing, getting out information on the PPP, et cetera, is just as applicable to childcare providers.
I've been telling, obviously we have, a publishing arm side of, what we do, but what I've said since the beginning, I've talked to publishers across the country that I know a handful, literally probably about, 3 different publishers, that when the first, stay-at-home orders went down, they literally just said fold shop and they shut it down, like year-long, 20-year-old businesses. And it's just, it's scary to think that's where they were. But what I've been trying to, convey is, everyone's life is different. Everyone's business is different. The way they do business is different. It's time, you're going to have to communicate that out to people. And I think, one of the analogies that I've been kind of, giving everybody, whether they're tired of it or not, is, I fly airplanes, and the first rule when you fly an airplane, no matter what happens, if you lose an engine, if you start going down, and it sounds funny, but it's like rule 1 is fly the airplane. You have to keep flying the airplane. And I try to equate that, they say it's aviate, navigate, communicate. And so kind of look, you have to keep flying. You've got to, navigate and find how you're going to do this, reach out to, reach out to the chamber, gather information, figure out, navigate, what's your map, how are you going to do this? And then you got to communicate that out, to everyone. You've got to communicate that to your staff. You've got to communicate that to your customers. You've got to communicate that to your, community. You've got to get it to your staff's family. You've got to get buy-in from everybody now. And I think that's, as business owners, that's something that is hard. We've got to remember, we got to keep flying the airplane, at the end of the day. So,
the recognition, to your point, is that so many of the businesses have struggled to get information that helps them fly the plane. What it's interesting to me about Liz's comment about PPP is many businesses either didn't want to apply to take government funding early on, didn't trust that it'd be available. And at one point it was outright. Didn't trust that it would be forgivable. And that enormous fear factor is out there. And then third, many of them may have thought, well, that's really not for my kind of business. And, we've seen that's been interesting. And I can imagine not just summer camps, but many of the folks listening may have thought it still isn't something that might match them. So I would say, just because of the number of folks that watch your program here, if they haven't applied for the Paycheck Protection Program, there is still $100 billion or so that's in the kitty that companies can take advantage of. The other thing that I think we worry about is we're a community with a lot of haves and have-nots, and the companies and the individuals who have been less likely, or at least anecdotally we've heard, less likely to take advantage of Paycheck Protection Program, or those who are disadvantaged, those who are smallest or perhaps least resourced, and those who really felt burned by the 2016 floods, who went and took advantage of small business loans back after 2016. It did damage to them and put them in a really strained position. And they're, the letters SBA are a 4-letter word to them. And so they're going to stay the hell away from those guys. And so
Right.
We've got concerns that there are businesses who are shutting or threatening shutting or concerned about failing who've not taken advantage of it. And yet it could be there as a financial lifeline to them. So I just want to make sure we say this now. If anyone's listening and hasn't thought to go take advantage of it, please do reach out to us. There are banks still processing PPP applications from new customers, even those that aren't your own banks. If your own bank never finally fully got you through, or you never had a banking relationship in the first place, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We'd love to help those companies that haven't gotten one yet to still get a Paycheck Protection Program. That is such a useful financial lifeline to a lot of those struggling business right now.
Absolutely. And I've worked with a lot of people, and one of the things that, I'll kind of add on top of that is what a lot of people who maybe, I had personal experience with a couple people where I was like, hey, did you fill out your app? And they're like, well, I don't have time for that. Or it's, that's going to be too complicated, or I got to find things. It really wasn't. It wasn't this huge daunting. It wasn't, I can remember in my early days of starting out in business, and somebody told me about the SBA and they give small business loans. And it was like, oh my God, this is awesome. I'm going to go find them, and went and found them. And then they were just like, here, all you got to do is fill out an application, download. Oh my God. It's like, I've got to run a business. I'm trying to start a company here. I need another company to run. That's not what we're talking about here. It's not it's SBA's, part of it. It's just one of those TLAs or 3-letter acronyms, for everybody. But
you got to recognize that the banks have been doing some incredible. We talked about we talked about this before, but the healthcare community has been so good as a frontline service. I really think that bankers, in many ways, have been another one of those frontline. When the Paycheck Protection Program came out, it was really clunky for the first few days and first week or so. They were spending the night at the office processing applications that were coming in hand over fist. And I think they're still, in many cases, doing everything they can to do it. Folks won't realize that they will help you fill out the application, which is a relatively, like you made the point, relatively simple thing. And the amount of information you have to pull is not that much about your business. Most anybody would have that readily at their fingertips who's a business owner. And the other fascinating thing to your point about the SBA, I haven't heard a single example of a person's application being rejected. So they'll walk you through the process. There's a lot of trust in the system that, get it to us. We'll trust you to do the right thing. And then, the next wave of concern is making sure that you do the right things to make sure you get the forgiveness that's been promised to you. And so that's been something our team has been working on this week. That guidance came out last weekend. And so now a lot of folks are very interested to understand some of those particulars. But again, it's not too complicated to walk through how to make sure you're going to be eligible for that forgiveness.
Yeah, I think I will say, I know, when we were talking with some of our bankers on some things, it was, it was phone calls, it was text, and it was, I think the day that the application came out, I think a number of people I talked to had the same experience. It was like, here's the app. And then it was like 30 minutes later, it's like, no, here's the app. Here's no, we're joking. I'm messing with you. No, here's the real app. This is the final app. It was just like, you couldn't even get one filled out until, they said, no, wait, we had to make a modification. Here's the new one. So it was interesting to say the least.
Fortunately, if you filled out the first one and had to fill out the second one, it wasn't that much different in the end. It was
exactly.
slightly different, but you'd already done your homework. You know, it was like the test was a little different than the practice test. You know, it's good.
Exactly. So, but it was just every time it seemed like everybody was trying to figure it out, and you had to work with them. And we were talking with a bunch of people, so it was interesting to say the least. But what if you got frustrated during that process? You just kind of got to get over it. But at the end of the day, that's everybody working together, and I think that's what we've done here. In our community, really well. In the business, we're trying to get information out.
Yeah.
To as many people as we can. We're trying to push. And really tell these business, these owners, I mentioned it, before, to me, the healthcare workers are, phenomenal. They've done an amazing job in here. Our first responders have done, amazing jobs as well. But it's that business owner, if I can ever give, the shout out, to them, I, pat myself on the back sometimes with this one, but it's really about everybody trying to just keep it going. It's one thing when you're dealing with, your own personal finances and then your own family's, finances and what they're doing. And then you've got a business and you've got employees and people that depend on you. It's a lot of weight, that these guys are carrying, and the more resources that you guys have been able, the chamber's been able to throw out to them, so they're not sitting in the dark, so they're not having to, I've taken some of the things that you guys have done, some of the webinars, some of the panels, and just hit play, and I've got AirPods on, and I'm walking around, I'm, making chicken, I'm just listening and consuming information, as we go, because I don't have time to sit and read it.
I mentioned to that point, Brandon, 3 things that I think are useful for folks to know that are out there. One, we early on launched something called BR Works, which I think has been one of the most popular things that we've created, because while it's for businesses, it's for individuals who are being furloughed or laid off, and the benefit is to both employees and employers. BR Works came out of an idea from one of our local businesses who said, look, I'm actually hiring right now. Can you help me lean in to meet other HR folks who might be furloughing or laying people off, that I could pick up some of their team members and do something? And so we cogitated on that for about 24 hours and came out with BR Works 24 hours later. And it's a kludgy little solution, but it works. It's about 95 companies we've now discovered who are hiring, that we've been able to play matchmaker to individuals who are seeing our website to find jobs for themselves or temporary positions for themselves, and the employers who need that resource right now to be able to take advantage of this incredibly weird period, that they actually need people when it's really kind of difficult to be in this hiring phase, because you can't really onboard people as easily as you can when you can meet them in person, and you got to be able to have some way to find them as quickly as possible. So that's one thing that I think I want to just sort of signal to people. That's still available at brac.org/recovery. If you go to BR Works, you'll see how to see who those 95 or so employers are that are hiring, and we keep checking for more and adding more every week. I think that's going to, as we kind of are in this new reopening and recovery phase, is going to be only more important for our community to be able to help those 100-something thousand people that got laid off or furloughed and they're filing for unemployment insurance. We got to get those folks assistance, and the best assistance is a job. The second thing that I'll mention is out there still as a tool. A lot of the employers and even childcare centers and summer camps have strained to be able to get access to protective equipment. We don't have it in our normal purchasing cycle to go find masks and the quantity of gloves we have to give, the amount of how difficult it is to find a Clorox wipe is astounding. And so getting that information, not just available to folks, but are available in real time at the best possible price, given how screwy the supply chains have been. So we worked with a great company that I'm so excited that stood up and did this. Lions Specialty is a logistics and distribution company that's in Port Allen. And Hugh Rach and his team stood up and said, we'll help y'all create some sort of center if you can help us control that the pricing and sort of ordering helps us make sure we can manage that we keep our prices as low as possible for folks. So it's been amazing. We've had now over 325, I think, companies as of yesterday who have ordered their protective equipment from that PPE marketplace that we rolled out just 2 weeks ago. And that's pretty amazing that has worked as well as it has. And because you can not only get it, and we've been tracking that the pricing on there is staying as close to current market prices as we can. I think and that you can pick up the next day, just go drive through. They do it outside at their distribution center. It's been a really cool pivot that's been helpful to businesses. And again, it has partly to do with how to make sure that the reopening is as safe as possible, something we've had as our mantra through all this. And then the third thing I'll tee it to Liz to say is on testing. So in the last, I would say 2 weeks, we've seen that many of the testing programs that are out there that have been really centrally focused on those that are at risk of hospitalization, who feel like they've got COVID, they've really said the tests are available for those who are infected, not for the general public, not for employers. So don't think that you can get access to these tests. Well, that's really changed in the last 2 weeks. So Liz, why don't you say a little bit about the project y'all are about to finish on testing?
Yeah, actually, dramatically so, that's changed. So we spent all day yesterday finding and calling every single testing provider that we could in the capital region. And there are more than 50 of them where you can get an appointment or you can walk in and you can get a test. Some of them require a doctor's note, but many of them do not. And some of them take insurance and some of them do not. And some of them, there's a lot of information out there, but we've gathered up all of this information. What we're hoping to do is release it tomorrow, fingers crossed, in an interactive map format. So you can hover over the place that's closest to you and find out everything you need to know. And if you need to get a test, go over there and get your test. Or if you need, as a business owner, you're thinking that's something that you would like for your employees, then you'll know where to send them.
It's amazing. I would venture to say, Liz, last year planning, you weren't trying to work logistics with PPE and, medical testing at the chamber, were you?
There are a lot of things we're doing now that we did not imagine we would be doing. No.
But all in the spirit of helping the business community, right?
We just try to fill the need, right? BRAC is here for business, so we're trying to fill the need.
Yeah, Brandon, it's interesting. The definition of economic development is changing so rapidly. What does it mean for the business community to know that there are jobs in Baton Rouge? The things we consider our kind of core bread and butter, if we operate with the modus operandi that our jobs in Baton Rouge is our priority, what secures those jobs changes that you need to deliver. It changes rapidly, obviously, in a period of pandemic, but it doesn't change that our North Star is job creation in Metro Baton Rouge. What does it take to secure that? Right now, while it's typically about, creating net new permanent jobs for our citizens, high paying, high quality jobs with benefits, right now it's just about getting people back into the jobs that they had as quickly as we can and helping the employers get back to stability so that they have the comfort to be able to do that.
Yeah, that kind of goes. Go ahead.
It's been a place where we've had to kind of focus on filling gaps and getting out information and being responsive to COVID, while also at the same time doing some of the work that we already do, which is thinking about the kind of public policy environment that we need in order to be able to be stronger. And so in this place, it's thinking about what does that look like for recovery, right? And so whether that's, our safe at work protocol that we put out several weeks ago, talking about how we can get things back to business, whether it's about now thinking through what kind of short-term training is going to be needed so that folks who are out of work and are not necessarily going to see their particular industry recover as quickly as others can pivot to another industry with short-term training. We've got to keep our eye on what's on fire right now, if you'll forgive the analogy, but also what do we need to do to get ready for what comes next?
That it reminds me, I've said it a number of times as well, and the old Zig Ziglar, you can get anything you want in life as long as you help enough other people get what they need first. And I think that's, kind of important here that, we're all trying, right? We're all trying to figure out what's the next piece and what do people need. And I think that's something important for the business community is, you guys are a voice for that business community. One person, can't, necessarily make a change, but they can make a phone call and say, this is what I'm struggling with. This is what I need help, and that brings me to, I was talking with a friend of mine last week, and they've been very entrenched in, politics here, and they've been around for a long time, and they've worked a lot of different businesses. And I think one of the things that they told me that was just, it's resonated with me is they said, Brendan, the rules are different. The game has changed, at the end of the day. It is not the same as it was before. It is completely different. And I made the analogy, and if, you guys are, it's kind of funny, you guys are doing the PPE and selling, or working the logistics on it. But like if I, 8 months ago wanted to go get into the PPE business, And I went and bought a bunch of it and tried to figure it out. And I could go drive around from hospital to hospital and business and supplier and try to say, hey, I've got all this in the back of the truck. This is my new business model. I'm selling this. You need to call our purchasing. You need to do this. You could pretty much pull up at a hospital right now, or you could pull up at a business, and they're like, oh, you got it. What do you need? How do we get it? It's the rules are completely different these days. And so I think that's what's exciting, but it also means don't think just because it was difficult before or you didn't know how to do it that you don't have any help. That's where you guys are pivoting to, you need PPE, make a phone call. They can tell you where to get it. I wouldn't have thought to go to, brag.org would have been my first place.
Yeah.
I think our team,
months ago.
interestingly enough, working from home for so many weeks, we're still more accessible than ever before, frankly, with all of that emphasis, as Adam said, on over communication. I mean, you can catch us on different platforms. There's phone numbers. There's the website. We've got a new chat feature on our website we never had before. I mean, you can get us, and we are here to help.
You're probably lives like I am. You can I'll go all day and I'll look up and I'm like, it's 7 o'clock. I had no idea. But and if you rang me at 8 o'clock, I'm answering the phone just like it's 3 o'clock. And everybody's got everybody's cell phone numbers. I've heard the latest thing is, we're all on Zoom and you can add people, your contacts to Zoom. And so I've got people that I know them, but like I'm not. They're calling me through Zoom and I'm answering like, hey, and it's just a random call.
Yeah.
It's like I didn't feel somebody called me on the cell phone the other day and I was like, I haven't talked to you on the phone in like months. Can we go back to Zoom? I'd rather you show me what you're talking about.
Exactly.
So.
It's funny you mentioned about Zoom too. We had, this is just a fun anecdote. I think that we had a platform for our voice over IP system for BRAC called 8x8 that we've been using for a number of years. And it has always had a video chat feature. We've never used a video chat feature once. And it was just fortunate that, back on whatever that was, March 13th or 14th, when we, went remote, we said, look, if you need to communicate with each other, here's how to set up a video chat with your team, how to set up an instant message chat with a group. And that platform fortunately enabled us to rapidly go remote. And I think what's interesting is, and we can talk about this further, but I think it's interesting too that that remote accessibility that you've learned through Zoom and we've learned through Zoom and 8x8 and too many video chat platforms now, it feels like it's so easy now that we've all forced ourselves to be trained on it, that I think that we're going to be forever changed, that this is sort of a big bang moment, right, for remote and video chat. And that moment, I don't think we've fully internalized how significant that shift is. And to some of the core things that BRAC worries about. We worry about traffic congestion in Metro Baton Rouge. We have no idea how much congestion is going to be affected by kind of the future of remote work. I think we'll see a lot of people ultimately return to their offices and their stores, but a significant portion of people are going to be able to continue to choose some amount of virtual work, whether
I can tell you
partially or all the time, like Facebook announced today. So
I can tell you, well, A, I didn't hear the Facebook announcement, but B, I can tell you I've done Zoom for years with the technology companies I've been involved in. A couple of years ago, I was given an award, from Zoom for like one of the top 10 users, of Zoom, globally, because that's how much I'd used it. But I could never have a Zoom. I'd email people here in town in Baton Rouge and be like, hey, can we jump on Zoom? And they'd be like, what? And I'd be like, you know what? Never mind. I don't have time to explain this to you.
If you had only brought stock, Brandon, you should have brought
that would have been smart. I should have, but that's the name of the game for me.
Yeah, right.
But now you mentioned, it's traffic. I would have that call with somebody, be like, hey, can you jump on Zoom? And I'd be like, okay, I'll just come see you. And then I'm jumping in the car and I'm driving downtown. How much of that's going to stop? You and I've met. I've driven downtown to meet at your place.
Yeah.
You have Zoom now. Unless you've got lunch, I'm not coming.
That's right. My incentive price has gone higher. That's right.
It's the new thing is going to be, if you want face to face, you bring lunch. You bring something that I can't explore over.
Add something to it. That's right.
Well, we've certainly anecdotally heard it. I mean, I have a friend who works for a global engineering company, and they work with engineers across the world. So they're used to interacting virtually, but they still had a building here and interact face to face in the workplace as we all do. Well, this has been a grand experiment, and most of them are not going to go back. So it's going to be interesting to see how our workforce really changes going forward, and how much of this really is going to stick.
I think we're going to have to find that balance. I think it's going to be,
Mm.
the slinky effect. As soon as we can all run, we're all going to run and go see each other, and then it's going to be kind of a pullback. But
Yeah.
I think, we joke about taking the calls all night long and, kind of working through this. And I think that for a lot of us, we're trying to, genuinely help. And so, I'm always going to answer my phone. I tell people, it's never too late to call. If I'm asleep, I won't answer. It's kind of, my rule. And so, with that and just getting people back moving, Adam, you talked something, you started to tell me, and I kind of cut you off in the beginning before we went, on some of the, this unemployment, that you guys, are kind of helping and keeping an eye on. Can you kind of catch me? We circle back, over there.
Yeah, thank you. So I mentioned the BR Works initiative. A lot of, let me come to this, a lot of what we've been tracking stems from what we call our leading indicators project. So one of the other things we pivoted to do right away in late March was to create a dashboard that is intended to help business makers understand what's happening in Metro Baton Rouge in the capital area, and recognizing that most economic data that you would normally read is put out monthly by the Bureau of Labor Statistics about unemployment rates, job creation, what's happening in different sectors. And so what we realized is we need to have data indicators that are available weekly, repeatable, and are going to be a picture of what's happening, even if they're not immediately about the economy. And so we looked at auto fuel sales as a great picture of, you can tell a lot about what's happening in the metro area economy about how we're selling gasoline. And so that was fascinating to get from one of our investors on a weekly basis. They've been telling us the prior week's auto sales at all their gas stations as a picture year over year of what's happening in that week. We've looked at unemployment claims. New initial unemployment claims data is available for all of our parishes on a weekly basis. And we saw the spike and then what is a slow decline each week of the new initial unemployment claims. The latest data came out today. We're down about 30% over last week for how many new claims came in. And that is probably as rapid as you can get data. It's also really fascinating that some of the major data providers globally got together, created a nonprofit resource, and that has been in the last 2 weeks, a data source that's available across the U.S. to know what's happening in every U.S. county on things like sales taxes. So it's amazing how much you can track nationally. When you aggregate that data and make it available for free, then it's a really helpful decision-making tool. To the point about unemployment insurance, I think I would say this as a policy issue, and it'll bring Liz into this conversation too. The concern that we heard from employers was when the pandemic unemployment insurance is paying out plus state unemployment about $850 a week. That puts a lot of people in a better financial position on unemployment insurance than they are going back to the job that they held before. And the employer who's sensitive to their former employees' needs, maybe somebody has been with them 20 years, like, look, I don't want to take that away from you. So I'm not going to offer you the job back until I absolutely need you. And when I do, I just would love you to come back as soon as you can. But it's also that the state has to be able to create a trigger that if you're offered your job, what's expected in typical unemployment insurance is you take your job back or you lose your unemployment insurance. And that has not actually been put into effect yet in a clear and simple way. And it's a national issue. This is not just the state workforce commission. The whole country is in this place where we're trying to make sure we don't pull back the safety net, but we also need to motivate folks to be employed because we need our unemployment rate to come down from 20-something%. And so that's an interesting current policy issue. I think it'd be great if Liz, you could kind of say a little bit about some of the work that y'all have been doing on that topic.
Yeah, so we look at that unemployment insurance amount, and it's about $44,000 a year if you annualize it. And you have to keep in mind that here in the Baton Rouge region, the median income is $46,000 a year, right? So it really can make a huge difference because it's a one-size-fits-all solution that came from DC that makes maybe a lot more sense in a Massachusetts or a California than it does here in Louisiana. And so while the Louisiana Workforce Commission has created this reporting mechanism for businesses, we're really worried about what's going to happen on the end of all of this. Because even though the reporting mechanism is there, they're not telling employees about it as loudly as we'd all like them to, and warning them that what may happen at the very end is that if they refuse work, and they turn down an offer to come back onto the job, refusing work, it's going to be treated as what's called an overpayment, which means LWC is going to come knocking on the door to get that money back. And the last
Oh,
thing
wow.
that we want, or any employer wants, is for that to happen, for them to get a letter from LWC saying, you got all this money in unemployment insurance and now you're going to have to pay it back. That'd be a terrible, terrible thing to happen. And so one of the things that we're, of course, trying to do is urge as loudly as possible LWC to be more clear about that on the front end for folks who are applying for unemployment insurance.
Wow. That is kind of a, back to what we said this whole, time. It's communication,
Right.
That's what people need, is communicate. So,
Yeah.
I guess with that, the second hurdle, that I've heard people are struggling with is I talked with a group and they were saying that, half of their office never left, they stuck it out. The other half went home and they just recently called them and said, come back. And so they've come back and then they've said, I heard them at the end of this week saying, we're going to open the door to the public Monday. And half of everybody freaked out and was like, I didn't want to come back, but you made me. And so I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm not good. You don't touch me. I won't touch you. You stand there. Don't bring the public in. And I've heard this, and this is from a lot of your, professional, services type firms and a lot of those to where, it's one thing for us to get over the mental, here. It's another thing for employers to, hey, come on, everybody. Let's, we're all, we're part of a campaign. I think you guys are as well. It's back to business, BR. It's getting them there, but it's also getting people emotionally ready, to come back, and say, hey, let's do this. And so I think that's what's going to be. It's so many of these little hurdles that we don't know about. But I think you guys can help in every area. Every time I've turned around, you guys have had some resource, there. And I think business owners are sometimes going, what am I supposed to do? It's lonely at the top. I don't know. And it's like, no, you need to just reach over to the channel. Like Abby said, you don't even have to be an investor right now. It's go to the website.
Yeah.
Economic development right now is help every business get every job that they can. And so that's our mission. And I will mention too that, in addition to being there as a resource, we're trying to make sure we can answer those questions. I think what we're doing this week is going to look different in 4 weeks. I don't know how much, but we're going to continue every week to make sure that we're responding to the changing nature of what is happening, and what employers are concerned about is going to change every week. One that you kind of are touching on with your last comment is a business who's allowing the public back in has a set of protocols and safety guidance that is just another thing they have to learn and figure out. And the only way to do that is to try. As we've done throughout this whole thing, we've had to try each little thing, learn from it, tweak it a little bit, iterate it, and see if it works. But ultimately, to be in business, you have to take that step. And the first time you take the step, it's going to be scary. What we're making sure we also offer people is guidance we're trying to do ourselves. So if you walk into our building, we did a soft opening. I'm sitting in our building in downtown. We did a soft opening. We offered our staff the voluntary opportunity return. It's not for everyone. We had about 5 of our 26 staff take us up on it. And we're trying out the same things everybody else are. We're doing safety screenings at the door, doing temperature checks. We've got a really cool logic questionnaire that we've built in that if an employee is coming to work, we're asking all of them to go through a set of 5 questions that we actually borrowed from Blue Cross, their questionnaire, to make sure that we understand what are the right things you should ask any person who comes into contact with you or your employees about what their risk factors are, and to make sure that you are intentional about asking those questions, because until there's a vaccine, everybody's a potential threat, and we have to be super careful about not putting any of our employees at risk. And so we're learning those lessons ourselves, hopefully, so we can also offer those experiences out back to the investor community, the business community out in the Baton Rouge metro.
Absolutely. I talked with Oshners a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about how we didn't do anything 2 months ago to cause, nobody was intentionally, like, we didn't walk up and cough on each other. We didn't go rub our hands, on each other's face. We didn't intentionally do anything to spread, this. And if we all just go back to work in the same manner that we did before, we potentially could have this, come back again. And I think there's two factors with that. It's one, it's the, hey, we've got to do something different. Things are going to be a little bit different. But two, we've got to also communicate and show that we're doing something different so that we can get people's emotional buy-in and they can feel that, hey, I'm being asked to come back to work. Here's what, my office did. We make fun of the sign in the bathroom, in all the restaurants that always says employees must wash hands before returning to work. But now that means something to everybody. So
that sign now has added on to it. And please don't have more than one person in this room at the same time, because I don't want to leave germs while I'm in the back.
Adam's probably tired at this point of hearing me talk about consumer confidence. I used to work in market research before I started working in economic development. And so consumer confidence, employee confidence, customer confidence, parent confidence, it's so important to our economic recovery. And really the only way to do it is start dipping your toe back into the water. As Adam says, the first time is scary, but we're going to get through and we're going to do it safely.
Well, I'll kind of wrap us up with this. And when you talk about the confidence, I think one of the things that's, very important, I know if I go write the rules and put the, what our guidelines, what we're doing at my office, people are going to look at me and go, you don't know anything about this. Why in God's name should we listen to you? I can tell them, no, I'm getting my information. I'm going to, I'm working with the chamber. I'm working with the healthcare. It's partners is where you're going to build a lot of that confidence. I have nothing to do with pandemic response. I've never had anything to do with it. So what makes anyone in my group think that I should be the one making some of those decisions? But if I can say I'm standing with, the chamber, we've been going to webinars, I've watched, 5 hours of this, and we've read the information that they've disseminated to us. We've partnered with. That breeds confidence. And so for business owners, they need to know you can't take this all on, yourself. It's too much of a cross to carry, and it's going to help you get more buy-in when you can show that you've got partners.
Well, and I think to the value proposition that is at the heart of why we exist as an organization is we all need to have something that we belong to that we can trust will bring us good information when we need it. Will give us those network connections that we need when we need them. And in many ways, that's what we're performing as a service, is to make sure that we do our due diligence and try to share honest, credible information to everybody. And then we have seen that in droves from so many other sources. While folks may pick on it, I think the Open Safely website that the state put together, the fire marshal's office put together, was innovative. It's really clever that they came out with a simple way that you can list your business type and it sends you safety guidance. And that safety guidance is not perfect. It's not full. It's not comprehensive, but it's damn good. And it's clever how they put it together.
And the speed at which it was put together from a state side. The state moved fast, it's amazing. Well, look, I've taken enough of you guys' time. You guys have got real businesses to go help, and put things together. But I think we've covered an incredible amount of information. We're going to try to get this out to everybody as soon as we can. I think you guys are a wealth of information. And kind of, I said with this whole thing, kind of, if you don't like the state of where we are, right now with COVID, wait 5 minutes, it'll change. It's kind of like the weather around here, so we'd love to have you come back, tell us, what's new, what are we missing, what's the next step, where are you guys at? Anytime you want to come on, we'd love to have you. So
we'd love to do it. I promise not to wear the Greek flag shirt next time, but that's great.
I'm trying to kind of keep up here. We're doing the home office, thing. We're doing the office. We're doing, down the road office. So it's all, at this point, the rules have changed. So. All right. Well, Adam, Liz, I appreciate the time extremely very much. Thank you for what you guys are doing and the community as well.
Thanks so much.
Appreciate the opportunity.